So I had this great treat yesterday, which is I'm told I get to see an advance copy of Idea Man, which is a Jim Henson Idea Man. And I have a lot emotionally invested in this film because I have my own Jim Henson connection. And I watched the film and it's fantastic. It's a fantastic documentary. There are so many things I learned about Jim Henson that I did not know. Jim Henson, I didn't realize his background growing up in this Christian Science.
Yes.
His mom's a Christian scientist.
His mom's a Christian scientist.
Yeah.
And he wasn't formally, because he wasn't all that religious. But of course, he was raised in that environment. But he was creative. He was smart, and he wanted to express himself. And his dad was a bit of a scientist, like an agricultural scientist. And so they would travel around to different parts of the country, a lot of it in the South. And but Jim, was looking for that kind of breakthrough. But it was a moment of transformation, and he seized that opportunity. But it's interesting that he wound up grabbing an ancient art form.
Yes.
And elevating it. When I was a kid sitting around, we were talking about the Andy Griffith Show. A lot of the character actors who would come on that show would be bitching and moaning because radio was dead.
Yeah.
Or vaudeville had gone. And yet we all know that those mediums didn't vanish. There isn't a vaudeville circuit per se, but there's stand-up, there's Cirque du Soleil, there's, the art forms are as relevant as ever. And I think you're so right, Conan. I mean, I just think creative people figure out a way.
They find a way. And what's fascinating to me is, Jim Henson is very interested in puppets, puppeteering. And one of the things that he wants to do early on is, and I hadn't thought of this before, but it's in your documentary, a lot of puppeteering was done just in kind of a wide shot, where you see
with the theater, with curtains,
proscenium and little curtains, and the characters are all bashing each other, and things are happening. I don't know if it's Jim Henson or his wife Jane, but they understand that the camera has to be right up. The TV camera has to be right up against the puppets,
right?
Muppets, and that you can see their expressions, and you can see a character deflate. And what's really fascinating to me is you have access in the documentary to all that early footage. It's long before it's very sophisticated.
Right.
It's basically Kermit, but they don't know it's Kermit yet.
Right.
But the kind of the puckering of the mouth, when there's a little bit of uncertainty, and the looking to the side, and then maybe looking back at the camera, all that stuff is there, and it's in close-up, and they're looking at what basically looks like a kinescope. Like the technology is very crude,
right?
But you can see, oh my God, this guy.
They're looking at the monitor and sort of seeing, well, where is the camera and where do I fit in? But the timing on this stuff was just fantastic. We interviewed Frank Oz, who's, gave the family was great. They made the archives available, but also they made themselves available in a really significant way. And they're storytellers themselves, and so they recognize the need to share what they understood about their parents, in a dimensional way, and so that was incredibly valuable. But Frank was there side by side, and he gave so much to the movie through his interview. In fact, stylistically, I tried to sort of channel Jim Henson and that aesthetic. A lot of stop motion, a lot of very kinetic cutting, and
some animation,
beats, some animations and things like that. And the idea sort of stemmed first from me watching a lot of Jim's experimental movies that had nothing to do with puppets,
which I didn't know about, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, me neither. Yeah. And they're cool, and in fact, they anticipate a lot of what you're going to eventually see in commercials or even music videos, right? There were kind of Hard Day's Night and stuff like that, So Frank, we did the interview, and I just had this idea. We did it in a cube because one of his experimental TV shows was called The Cube. And it's like a human being trapped sort of just with himself and his ideas and thoughts. So we decided to have the interview subjects be in a cube. It also would allow us to use those cubes. They're almost like television sets, to keep putting a lot of visual imagery in there and keep telling this story of Jim and the Muppets. But we did Frank's interview, It was very moving, very informative, very funny. And I said, Frank, what if we did what if your entrance into the set, we were going to have you just come and sit down, but what if we did it stop motion? And he, of course, instantly knew what to do.
Yeah.
So we put the camera up high. We had a chair kind of squiggle in, come in and stop.
Yeah.
And he went in perfectly, one take, laid out all the steps and all the beats so that we could do it. And it just established immediately for the editors and myself that, we were gonna inform this movie with this kind of aesthetic.
Well, also, you were having fun.
Yes.
So you're making a documentary about this great artistic genius and his work, but you're also making sure that you're leaving room for fun, which is the essence of Jim Henson.
Yes.
And, my connection to it was that my whole reason I'm in comedy is I was always interested in comedy and doing it for my friends. And then I decide I need to be serious. So I go to a serious college, which turns out to have this very old humor magazine in it as part of it, the Harvard Lampoon. I get on the Lampoon, and almost immediately, the person who's put in charge of it, the first woman to ever be put in charge of it, is Laci Henson.
Oh.
And so then she's my boss. I'm working for Laci Henson. And then every now and then Jim Henson's around, and I'm losing my mind.
Wow, I bet.
And he could not have been a sweeter, nicer man. And in fact, Lisa graduates. I take over the Lampoon. And at one point, Jim Henson calls me and says, "Hey, we just finished The Dark Crystal, and we have these thrones that the creatures sit on in the Dark Crystal. Do you guys want one for your Lampoon building?"
Oh, my God.
And
oh my God.
You've never heard me say yes to anything more quickly.
That's amazing.
And so I said, "Yes, how do I make this happen?" Because I'm just still a kid.
Right.
I'm like 19, and I'm going, "Yes, Mr. Henson. So what do I?" And he said, and it's funny because when you're talking to Jim Henson, you're talking to Kermit.
Kermit, kind of, yeah.
So Kermit's on the other end of the line saying, "Well, just get a van and come on down to New York and pick it up, you idiot." And I'm like, "Okay, Kermit and Henson, bye."
Oh.
So I hang up the phone. We rent a van, and my friend Mark Gannum and Maya Williams, we jump in this van. And we drive down to Manhattan, and I'm petrified because I'm like, "We're driving to Manhattan." Suddenly, it's like a Muppet movie, and I'm kind of a Muppet, and I'm going, "What's happening?" And then we get to the
day out.
Yeah, exactly. I'm Beaker, and we get there, and sure enough, there's like Snuffleupagus is hanging from the ceiling, and they say, "Oh yeah, here's the chair. It's made of. It's not that heavy because it's made of this super light material. We carry it like a jewel." And
It's
we
amazing.
put it in the back
I've
of the van.
sat in one of those chairs at their, at the studio.
And I drove it all the way back to Cambridge, and we put it in the Lampoon building. So cut to, I don't know, like maybe 9 months ago, I'm in Cambridge, and a student comes up to me and says, "Hey, by the way, Conan, I'm on the Lampoon. Do you want to come by?" And I went, "Yeah, sure. I haven't been there in a long time." So I go by, and there's the chair.
Oh, my
Great.
God.
Little banged up.
Yeah.
Because they drink. I mean, the puppets drank.
Yeah.
It was that way when we got it.